Hi, this is Jon Gabriel, and welcome to the show. I'm very pleased today to be joined by Mark Mcafee, and we're going to be talking about the benefits of raw milk versus pasteurized milk and trying to understand which is better. Mark is the CEO and founder of Organic Pastures Dairy Company in Fresno, California. Organic Pastures has become California's first raw milk dairy. Organic Pastures delivers raw milk products to more than 400 California retail stores and 15 farmers markets. Mark is an active pilot who travels around spreading his message through his Share the Raw Milk Secret presentation. And these presentations educate consumers about the benefits of raw milk and encourages consumers to get to know your farmer and get to know your food, a USDA new initiative. Mark is internationally recognized as an expert in raw milk production and works with researchers and doctors in their expanding practice of complementary medicine. Mark has created and published the first international raw milk safety standards, which you can see at rawusa.org if you go there. Also, as you're listening, to learn more about Mark Mcafee and his farm and his work, please visit www.organicpasture.com. And this is a live blog talk show, so you can call in and talk to me. If you're in the U.S., you can call 877-662-3716. Or in Australia, 1-800-646-2889, and press 1 if you want to talk to us. That way we'll know that you have your hand up. So, Mark, welcome to the show. It's great to have you.
Absolutely. Honored to be with you.
Thanks so much, Mark. You know, I just have the first thing I want to say is, when I was a kid, we used to get milk delivered to us, to our door. Every morning we get a bottle of milk. It would be like a quart of milk in a glass bottle, and it would say pasteurized, homogenized milk. And I remember from the age of 8, it was just a given that milk, anytime you saw milk, it was always pasteurized, homogenized. And I grew up, and I think we all grew up, with this just unquestioned assumption that milk was always pasteurized, sometimes homogenized, but always pasteurized, and that you couldn't even touch milk if it wasn't pasteurized. So what's the story? What's the real deal?
You know, it's interesting because we see common cultural educational practices, kind of paradigms that occur in certain areas of the world that believe that. North America has been generally told that. Australia has been told that. New Zealand's been told that.
That's right.
But if you go to Eastern Europe, you go to Mexico, you go to South America, they don't have that ingrained old teaching at all. In fact, we're at the farmers markets and selling our raw milk here in California. If you hear some kind of an accent, a heavy accent coming from France or Germany or Russia or South America, automatically you know that they have no preconceived notions about pasteurization. They just want raw milk like they had it back home, and there's no discussions about this added layer of, kind of an influence about pasteurization. But I can tell you a little bit more about that. It's really, back in the 1800s, if you look at the downtown brewery distillery dairies in Philadelphia, New York, Boston, and even some of the other international countries, where mankind had brought the animals with them to concentrated places where civilization was now kind of concentrating together, and the cows weren't eating pastures anymore. They were being fed distillers' grains at breweries. That was a huge transition from the cow's natural habitat and her natural pH in her gut, and as a result, she started having all kinds of issues with her health. And from that period, the mid-1800s forward, they started having major problems with people dying from raw milk. That was not the story of milk out on green grass pastures and sunshine, which has always been safe. So we really have two kinds of raw milk in the world to talk about.
Yeah. So basically what you're saying is that it's not the raw milk that causes the issues, but it's how the cows are grown and what they're feeding and how healthy the cow is that's going to determine the benefits. Is that what, or the safety?
Exactly. The cows have 4 stomachs, and they, throughout all time, from the beginning of their mammalian transition to being what they are today, they've always eaten grass. Yeah. They've been the connection between the sun and making food, making beef, milk, butter, cheese, cream. Yeah. And when there's grass growing, the cows can eat. They can digest that. We can't digest that. And for 30,000 years ago, mankind has very intelligently been able to rely upon cows or sheep or goats or whatever mammal to get milk and not have to hunt.
Okay. So the first question I have is, is it even legal to get raw milk right now? Like, what's the laws and regulations?
In California, raw milk has always been legal. In fact, I'll correct a little bit of your introduction. We are the first organic raw milk dairy There's been dairies before us forever, Altadena Dairy, Clairville Dairy, other dairies that have produced raw milk for all time in California. But raw milk is kind of a microcosm of political niche. Every state has their own little niche-y little political law about regulation of raw milk. There's 8 states in the United States that allow the retail sale of raw milk in some form, and about half the states prohibit raw milk sales, and the other half of the states get raw milk in some other form, either in a cow share program or going directly to the farm. I know in New Zealand and in Australia, raw milk is illegal except as Cleopatra's bath milk. You can get that. But it's generally prohibited. And if you look at the regulations, it has to do with the dairy industry not wanting competition and recognizing that it's hard to do raw milk in a safe fashion. You have to be concentrated on doing that, and you can't industrialize it. You can't put it all together in one big old commingled tank and don't worry about it. You have to actually have it come from one source, and a farmer has to take diligence, has to take some real responsibility for it. In fact, here at Organic Pastures Dairy, we have a world-class food safety program that's voluntary. We go way beyond the state requirements and meet and exceed pasteurized milk standards for cleanliness without pasteurizing. So we're talking about really clean milk. And the interesting thing is it's clean living milk, not dead, dirty milk.
Right. And that's a huge point. And let me just talk about that for 1 second, because we talk about, in my approach to weight loss and health, is adding more live food that has bioavailable enzymes and healthy bacterias and biophotons and life force energy. And in doing my research over the years in milk, one of the problems with milk is in the pasteurization process, it totally denatures the food and the nutrition. So what happens is, for example, our bodies don't even recognize it as food, and it causes an immune response. That immune response triggers certain inflammatory hormones that actually activate what I call the fat programs, and actually triggers your body to gain weight. Also, the calcium. We talk about there's so much calcium in milk. The calcium becomes denatured, and it can't be absorbed into your body. Right, and what happens is it ends up being calcium deposits in your joints, which causes calcification and also causes inflammation in your joints, which also causes arthritis and can activate your fat programs. So I know that the pasteurization process causes a lot of problems with milk, but the question that everybody has is, how do we know if it's safe? Obviously they started doing the pasteurization process because people were dying because they weren't handling the cows properly. So what as a consumer can we do to make sure we're getting safe raw milk?
If you're in the United States of America, there's websites fully dedicated to this. If you're international, you have to actually get to know the farmer a little bit, because on a state-by-state and country-by-country basis, raw milk may or may not be available. But I'll tell you, there are 2 kinds of raw milk for human consumption and raw milk for pasteurization. And human consumption raw milk is a completely different process than you would, doing a big factory, industrial-type production. You have to remember that 80%, a full 80% of our immune systems are represented by the biodiversity of good bacteria in your gut. Right. And raw milk is a whole, complete food. Enzymes, bacteria, raw fats, everything's undenatured, whole, in its God-given nature form. It's not in any way modified by irradiation or heat or processing or temperature or pressure with homogenization. It is the way Mother Nature intended. And if you were to use a search engine and look up the most allergenic food in America, you would find pasteurized milk being number 1. But then you look at the studies done in Europe, in Basel, Switzerland, with the Parcel study and the Gabriel study, and you find that raw milk actually stabilizes mast cells and causes a wonderful, wonderful healing and prevention of asthma, allergies, and eczema. So you're right. The inflammation response is definitely brought on by the histamines as well as other inflammation from this denatured proteins and whey proteins and all this mess you get when you superheat pasteurized milk. So raw milk is phenomenal healing food.
Okay, so when you say you got to get to know your farmer, like what are the questions that we need to ask to make sure that we're getting? For example, I live in Australia, where you're not supposed to have raw milk, or you can't buy raw milk. But at the same time, I'm friends with farmers nearby, and I can get raw milk if I want to. And so, but I need. What are the questions that I need to ask my farmer to make sure that I'm getting healthy raw milk?
Well, first of all, does the farmer drink his own milk? That's a big thing to look at. If the farmer drinks his own milk That's a big sign. However, farmers drinking their own milk can drink pathogen-ridden milk and be completely immune to those pathogens, those Listeria or E. coli or Campylobacter or Salmonella, and be completely immune to those, where somebody coming off the farm could get really sick from it. So you have to ask the guy, hey, listen, does your family drink this milk? Do you share it with friends? And then you look at the conditions. How does this guy take care of his cows? Does he have pastures? How does he clean his milk lines? One of the most dangerous things that you find in raw milk production is this. It's called biofilms. Inside of the stainless steel milk lines in the milk barn, if they're not clean, you have these wonderful, interesting fat-based little colonies. They're living in the inside of these milk lines if they're not clean. And inside of those biofilms, you get Campylobacter and Pseudomonas bacteria that actually hide out in the oxygen-deprived anaerobic environment conditions, and actually can reemerge and actually be pretty dangerous in the milk, which doesn't have them, but reemerges in the next milking. So you have to make sure that this guy is doing a good job of cleaning his milk lines and chilling it rapidly, so that all you're getting is milk, not something that's contaminating the milk. So is the family drinking the milk, and how well does he clean his milk lines, and is it chilled rapidly? Those are all questions you want to look like. And, is this guy a neat and clean kind of guy? Is he really concerned about safety, and does he have a food safety plan? Most dairies in Australia and New Zealand are actually required to have a food safety plan, but it doesn't get particularly technical. But you have to ask some probing questions about, hey, do you drink your own milk? And then ask further questions about how clean do you get this stuff, because I'm really interested in drinking it, and I don't want to get sick.
Right. So how long does raw milk last versus pasteurized milk?
Good question. We here in California, with really clean raw milk, get about 10 days of shelf life, and that's if it's kept at 38 degrees, which would be like 2 to 3 Celsius, right. Just above freezing. But don't expect it to have a long shelf life. A long shelf life means dead food.
Right.
And dead food do the same thing in your gut. They sit on the shelf with minimal refrigeration. Guess what? Right. They do the same thing in your gut. They don't break down. They're not assimilatable. So raw milk is a food that wants to become another food. It wants to become yogurt. It wants to become cheese. It wants to ferment. That's why it's so beautifully easy to digest and so bioavailable, is because it's unstable in the gut. It breaks down immediately. It doesn't cause the lactose intolerance, and it's easily digested. Right.
So how do we know if the milk, and this may be a stupid question now, but how do we know if the milk's bad? Just by the smell and, is it that simple? That once it goes bad, it's...
Well, here's the thing. As raw milk starts to ferment, it actually becomes safer. The lactobacillus bacteria starts eating the lactose sugar, creating lactic acid. That drops the pH, separates the curd away, and actually causes fermented food, like a kefir. Most raw milk around the world in third world countries is not drank raw in fresh form. It's actually fermented in the local culture, either like a kefir or a yogurt or clabber or something like that, because there's no refrigeration. So, going bad is actually not the way we characterize raw milk. If it's high-quality raw milk and you ferment it and you add in some cultures like kefir grains or pima grains or maybe some yogurt cultures or something like that, you actually get a wonderfully delightful fermented raw milk, which is actually more bioavailable and extremely probiotic, with maybe up to 200 different kinds of bacteria at very, very high levels, maybe 10 to 20 million per milliliter. And that is a phenomenal way to recolonize your gut and create that super strong immune system, which is missing in most first world citizens.
Yeah, that's amazing. But what I'm hearing you say also is, even if we don't add the bacteria to ferment it, you're saying the bacteria is already there fermenting it anyway.
Correct. And that self-cultured product, milk coming out of the udder of a mammal is generally almost sterile. There are some commensal local bacteria in the teat canal which actually complete the genome of the milk as the milk comes out of the cow. However, there's not very many of them. There's just a few colonies there. The rest of the bacteria are environmental bacteria that actually inhabit the milk, which actually complete the genome. There are colonizing bacteria from bifidobacteria, coliform bacteria, lactobacillus bacteria, many different forms, a lot of environmental bacteria. They actually love raw milk and take up place and start to eat the lactose sugar to create that fermentation cycle. And that's not necessarily bad. That's actually part of the whole culture of culturing raw milk into making other products like cheese and so on and so forth. So the cleaner you can get it, the longer it will last. The colder you get it, the longer it will last. However, you don't need to be a bacteriophobe or paranoid about it. You just do the best you can if you want to have a long shelf life product, but realize that raw milk is supposed to have these wonderful beneficial diversity of bacteria in it. That's the way it was intended to be. In fact, that's what preserves the milk as it evolves into its next stages of life. If it's really filthy raw milk, it'll actually have an off odor to it. And even filthy raw milk is not necessarily that dangerous, except for somebody who's really, really immune depressed, or maybe has just been on antibiotics or something. You maybe get sick. But for the most part, raw milk has any kind of diligence at all and any kind of care should be just fine.
Okay, beautiful. Yeah. So when I'm looking at raw milk, I have to say from my own experience that whenever I drink just regular milk, any kind of dairy, I always feel like I always get, my nose starts running. I get an upset stomach, all of those things. But when I drink the raw milk that I've been getting, it's a totally different experience. There's no question about it.
We know the science behind that, John, and it's fascinating you report that because that's what everybody reports. It's not an unusual event. You're normal. Your body recognizes fake food. The bottom line is if you take milk from 50 different dairies and put it in a big bulk tank at a creamery like they do in Australia and New Zealand and all over the world in first world nations, you get a combined milk altogether of all these different milks from these different dairies. That milk is actually not that clean. It actually has quite a load of bacteria, and the tolerances allowed under the pasteurized milk ordinance and international ordinances for milk that is intended to be pasteurized are very, very high. So that milk needs to be pasteurized because it's not going to have a very long shelf life before it starts to have some problems. And a lot of these milks have pathogens in them. And in the United States, it's actually policy that you never test for bad bugs, pathogens like Listeria or E. coli or Salmonella and Campylobacter in milk that's intended to be pasteurized because they rely solely on the pasteurization step to kill them. So anyway, bottom line is you need to pasteurize that milk. Now, when you pasteurize the milk, the bacteria goes through the heat of 165 degrees or so Fahrenheit for about 15 to 20 seconds. When you do that, the bacteria is still in the milk after pasteurization. The cell membranes are lysed. They're broken open. That's how you get cell death. And the internal proteins inside the bacteria are released outside. So you now have pieces of bacteria broken open with all the internal cell contents spilled all over the place. That becomes highly allergenic. When you ingest that, your body recognizes that and goes, wait a minute, I don't know what this is. This looks like plastic in a big rock concert. We got to pick up the mess.
Which is what it is, basically.
Yeah, it's just a bunch of waste. And your body doesn't recognize that, and it creates mucus to cough it up. And there's all this mast cell degradation and histamines released. That's why it's so allergenic.
Right. Well, when you're talking about spilling out proteins, I was reading recently that one of the biggest problems with milk is this one protein, beta-casein A1. Are you familiar with that?
I'm familiar with beta-caseins, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So they cause a lot of problems. They're linked to diabetes, heart disease, schizophrenia, all kinds of different ailments. And what they said was there was an older type of cow that from 5,000 years ago, they had a different type of beta-casein. It was beta-casein A2. That one was healthy and didn't cause the problem. It's this newer type, and that some older cows, there are still some cows out there that have this older type of casein. Is that something that we can find at all? Do you know?
I have a conflicting comment on that. It's very interesting. Okay. Mike Schmidt and myself have been producing raw milk for many, many years here in North America, and don't completely buy the A2, A1 argument. And the reason is that the two guys that developed this concept, actually I know them. They came to my dairy and tried to recruit me about 6 years ago within here in North America, the A2 Corporation, and they wanted my milk to be in their brand, and they wanted to pasteurize my milk, and that was a non-starter for me because we do raw milk. But the bottom line was that it's a patented test. And the test is patented. You can't actually do that test, and it's patented. And it's in the New Zealand court system in bankruptcy, from what we understand. And so people have been asking this question about how do we do A2. And the interesting thing is the theory is that 5,000 years ago there was this division in the animal kingdom where you have these animals go A1, A2, but nowhere past 125 years ago do we see this genetic issue with the 67th amino acid of the chain. We saw a major change 100 years ago when we started feeding grain to cows, keeping them out of pastures, and doing other weird things with them like antibiotics and stuff. And what
that makes so much more sense to me, quite frankly. I just want to say, before you go any further, that conceptually that makes total sense. Because once you start feeding a cow grain, you totally change their biology. So you change their stomach, you change their cells, you change their... Yeah.
And if you look at pasteurization, my God, just not one amino acid is destroyed. You look at the whole frickin' chain destroyed. Yeah. It's a car wreck. So really, I get it. I get it with the older cows, and I get it with the older cows on green pasture. But I tell you what, even with modern cows that are on green pastures being fed properly and treated properly, you still see the same kind of benefits if the milk is raw versus. And so there was a book called Devil in the Milk. And I tell you what, I don't think it's so much the devil in the milk as it's the devil in how you feed the cow and take care of her.
I agree with that too.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm not quite buy in completely to the whole concept of A2 versus A1.
I'm happy you're telling me that, because that definitely makes a lot more sense to me. And also what you said about when you pasteurize, the cell gets split open and the proteins get spilled out. So is that more the issue with the beta-casein? Is that for people that are listening, beta-casein is a protein inside the milk that causes a lot of problems. Now, is there a difference whether it's pasteurized or not pasteurized as to whether or not that beta-casein is going to be released into the milk and whether or not it's going to cause problems? Great
question. Casein is pretty stable through the pasteurization process. However, there are changes that occur within the DNA. The proteins do get changed, but minimally. The whey protein is almost completely destroyed. In fact, that was the big thing that was found in the Gabriel study in Europe just this last year, was how when the whey protein is denatured, you get all these inflammatory responses from asthma and allergies. So there's kind of two different proteins. You get the whey proteins and the casein proteins, and they are modified. They are changed through heat. The whey protein is more significantly changed than the casein protein. But casein is really hard to digest, and especially children that have autism, it becomes a casomorphine. And so even raw milk can be a little bit hard for kids to digest because of this casomorphine issue. So what we do is, what we have right now is rampant in the world is this leaky gut syndrome with all this permeability and lack of digestive enzymes and bacteria, and the colonies of the gut are all screwed up, and autism and all kinds of things coming out of that. What you have to do is repair the gut first, and then you start to digest things better. So we always recommend drinking things like kefir and pre-digested raw milk products before you go into raw milk if you have a really screwed up gut.
Okay, now let me just ask you a question. Is the casein related to the leaky gut? I mean, does that contribute or cause the leaky gut syndrome?
I don't think it causes it. The cause of leaky gut syndrome is largely kind of not known specifically, but you can certainly list the risk factors. The risk factors, my God, everybody with leaky gut syndrome has had massive rounds of antibiotics.
Right.
A lot of them have had no breastfeeding as a child. A lot of them are C-section. A lot of these kids don't have the good seeds to start off the biodiversity of gut bacteria. And as a result, they really get screwed up with the engineering of what's going on with the direction of the cell membrane that lines the intimal lining of the intestine. And as a result, you see all these really, I mean, you see some phenomenal studies right now internationally showing how when you get that gut bacteria back in the gut with the right food, the right whole unprocessed foods to feed the gut, and get the preservatives out of the food and all the fake stuff you don't understand, your body doesn't understand, then your gut starts to heal up. And then after that, wow, digestion occurs, leaky gut syndrome, allergies, all those things go down.
Mark, I just want to say you are speaking my language.
All right, John, I love you too.
Because that's very much what I talk about. It's how crucial digestion is in every aspect. It's our lifeline to nourishment, to vitality.
No question.
So, and then, what's that?
No, go ahead, John.
There was one I was reading recently, and Mercola had an article about recombinant bovine growth hormone, which is a hormone that they give to cows that's been linked to breast cancer and many other problems. So how does that is that something we can protect ourselves from also with raw milk?
Yes. Here's the thing. I don't think New Zealand and Australia allow BST hormones, so I think you're good there. The United States is one of the only countries in the world that actually allow it to be sold, and it's being used less and less because the dairy industry has realized that it causes too much milk production, number one, and they're overproducing milk, so that's number one. It causes milk glut. And number two, consumers don't want to have any part of it. In fact, you look for labeled milk that says doesn't come from RBST-treated cows. That whole idea, that Monsanto creation from a few years back, is kind of dying off, thank God, because it does stimulate the growth of cancer cells in the breast. And it may not cause cancer initially, but boy, if you've got it, it really triggers it to grow rapidly. And European studies show that to be true. The FDA has suppressed any kind of research here in the United States to support or substantiate those truths. But I'll tell you what, in Europe, it's all over the place. Nobody will touch this stuff.
Yeah. That makes sense. Mark, we've got a number of questions people have texted into us, and I'm going to bring I'm going to bring Shannon in from my office on the line, and she's just going to ask us some of those questions, and maybe you can help us with that. So, Shannon, are you there?
Hello. Yes, I am.
Sure can.
I've got a question from Patricia in Cairns. She's studying nursing and has been told one reason milk is pasteurised is to stop the spread of tuberculosis through unpasteurised milk. And Leora from Lismore has a similar question.
All right. Let's get to that. So the tuberculosis.
Yep.
Mark.
Great question. Here's the thing. You may, or if a cow has tuberculosis, she may or may not be shedding the tubercular problems in her milk. So most of the time, Mother Nature protects her young, so she will give the antibodies to that disease in the milk, but not the actual disease itself. However, if the tubercular lesion is inside the udder, you can get direct tuberculosis and make you sick. So, yes, we test all of our cows for tuberculosis, and we must be a tuberculosis-free herd in order to sell raw milk. And that test is very effective and very accurate. So you want to make sure you've tested your herd for brucellosis and tuberculosis both.
Okay, so going back to just a mom-and-pop farmer in your neighborhood that could supply you with raw milk, is that a question we need to ask them? Do you test for tuberculosis and other?
That's a very intelligent question to ask. Do you test for brucellosis and do you test for tuberculosis? And if they're serious about selling raw milk, they will have done that. And it's not required to sell raw milk to be pasteurized to test for those things. So brilliant question, right on the target, because if you go to Joe Blow, you're probably testing it.
Right. Okay. All right, Sharon, you want to ask us some more questions?
Yeah, I have one from August in Texas, who says, I love Greek yogurt. I eat it almost every day, mixed with stevia and topped with berries and ground flax seeds. I just get the kind that's available in the grocery store. How bad is that?
How bad is that?
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what. There's lots of questions around that. Where did the milk come from? The milk come from cows treated with BST hormone. Is it grain-fed versus grass-fed? Is it organic? Are there antibiotic residues? There's lots of questions. Is it good fat? Is it bad fat? Good fat comes from grass-fed cows. The bad fat or inflammatory types fats, the bad cholesterol type fats, generally come from grain-fed cows. So there's a lot of label study you'd want to do on that. And generally speaking, and I don't want to overgeneralize here, but just generally speaking, the generic type of yogurts you find in the store are going to come from confinement dairy operations that are grain-fed, that are used antibiotics and everything else, unless they've made some kind of medical claim, or not medical claim, but a production claim like organic or BST-free or grass-fed on it, which is not the common product. So to your friend down there, yogurt is wonderful. I love Greek yogurt. It's the higher fat yogurt. However, I would discriminate even more and look deeper into it if you're looking for a health food product, because there could be some stuff that's not so good for you in there, but I don't want to steer you away from yogurt. It's a wonderful product.
Okay, so organic. So we're getting organic grass-fed. That's something we can get at the store. So if it's organic and coming from grass-fed yogurt or milk, how good is that versus raw milk?
Great question, John. Here's the thing. They're different completely. If you have organic, it's going to be very similar to what we're doing, except it's been heated. Now, organic pasteurized versus organic pasteurized and homogenized, which is the crushing of the butterfat, and then organic plus grass-fed, because organic doesn't necessarily mean grass-fed, although it does mean that more now because they've changed the laws recently. Down in your neck of the woods, there's a lot more grass-feeding going on with organic than there is here in the United States. So I would say that that's a good thing to have organic and grass-fed. And if you can just have minimally pasteurized and not homogenized, wow, that's really good, especially when you add back in the bacteria. You've kind of done CPR on the dead milk. You've got the enzymes and good probiotic bacteria added back into the milk. Now you're actually almost back to raw, but there's still some proteins that have been denatured and the enzymes are missing. So unless the bacteria is creating the enzymes for you, you may not have a complete food. But at least you're better off than you were with pasteurized for sure.
Right. Great. Good to know. All right, Shan, you want to keep going, hon?
Yeah. Rose from Adelaide says, I like raw milk cream. It stops my hunger. Is it good for me? What is a nutritional value of raw whey, and can I drink raw whey as a source of protein instead of taking whey powder?
Getting raw whey is difficult because in the United States, raw whey is not even actually available. You have to make it. You have to get it by making cheese. You have to separate the curd and the whey by fermentation. So you take raw milk and you allow it to ferment, and you take the clear fluid off, and that's the raw whey. Raw whey is very, very nutritionally supportive. It's a great source of protein. It's great for muscles, and it also is that wonderful mast cell stabilizing protein that's talked about in the Gabriella and Parsifal studies in Europe, which actually stops asthma, allergies, and eczema. So wonderful whey proteins that are not heated, and those are not in the powdered form. The powdered form, I don't know of any around anywhere that's not pasteurized first. So I don't think you're going to find raw whey in the stores, especially in areas that forbid the sale of raw milk. We don't even sell raw whey in California. You have to get it by taking raw milk and then fermenting it and then separating it out together. So I would really encourage people, if they want to have a really healthful protein, especially like a smoothie or a mix, raw whey is fantastic, but it's not easy to get. And that was another part of your question, I'm sorry?
Before Shannon, before you answer that, I just want to make also a point about people also get confused between there's a whey powder and whey protein powder, because they're very different. Whey powder has maybe a small percentage of protein. Whey protein powder, they actually isolate the protein from the whey to create something that's mostly protein. So people do often get confused and think they're taking protein powder when they're just taking whey powder. So you do want to differentiate that if what you're looking for is protein.
And also whey protein that's been not denatured versus denatured. Raw whey protein is a very rare thing versus whey protein, which is pasteurized and then dried.
Yeah. We're actually working on a proprietary blend of protein right now that comes from grass-fed organic cows. I don't think it's not. I don't think it's going to be raw, but it is going to be organic. What's your thought about that?
Well, I think it's wonderful. If there was a way to dehydrate it through some kind of a low-temperature vacuum freeze-drying process, you could actually have a wonderful raw whey protein. And here's how you could do it. You actually ultra-filter it, and that takes out all the bacteria, so all the proteins and everything, enzymes are all intact, and you haven't actually taken out anything of the whey protein still intact. So you can ultra-filter it and then dehydrate it and actually have a legal for sale in a non-legal for raw milk area, something that's equivalent to pasteurization without having the denaturing effects on the protein. And then you would freeze-dry that, and boy, would that be an awesome product.
Let me ask you, is that something you can do for us?
Well, I can't do it for you, but you could do it down there, though.
Yeah, okay. All right, good.
You wouldn't have there wouldn't be any fat in it because the fat is too large, the molecules are too large to get through ultrafiltration. But you've got the whey protein in raw form that's actually gone through a process which is equivalent to pasteurization without the heat, so you still have all the wonderful value of the whey protein.
That would be amazing.
Totally awesome.
That would be an incredible product.
Awesome.
We're working on the best product. This is the best protein that I think we can find, that I've found.
No question.
So, yeah, good. All right, so I'm sorry, Shannon, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Keep going.
That's okay. The other part of Rose's question, and Margaret from Adelaide is also asking, how good or bad is fresh raw cream for me?
Great. Yeah.
Medical professionals usually dismiss the health benefits.
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, medical professionals are not trained very well in nutrition. So you'd want to go to somebody that knows something about nutrition to learn about nutrition, because the medical doctors are basically trained in first world countries, or they believe in surgeries and medication to fix things, and they don't have a full toolbox to deal with nutrition and exercise and those things that are so important to prevent disease to begin with. But as far as raw cream is concerned, if it comes from a cow that's grazed on green grass pastures, in California, people fight over this stuff because it's so incredibly powerful to decrease the the C-reactive protein levels in your body, the really? Wonderful indicators of cholesterol buildup. You know what that is?
Because it's got essential fats, because it has essential fats in it.
Yes, and they're in raw form. That's powerful stuff in terms of the beneficial omega-3 ratios or the 6 ratios and the CLA values. That's powerful stuff to actually enhance your cholesterol levels and make the good ratios and decrease inflammation in your body. The C-reactive protein levels will drop by 90%. When you start eating those kinds of beneficial fats, and your immune system starts to work properly.
That makes sense, and it's the exact opposite of pasteurized milk, because what you're saying is the fat in raw milk is an anti-inflammatory.
Yes.
Which makes sense, because grass-fed cows have more of omega-3s and the CLAs and the omega-6s, which would be an anti-inflammatory. So it's totally amazing that in one
medicine.
case.
It's
in one case, it's medicine for the pasteurized milk.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Pretty
so
powerful stuff.
that's really interesting. Let me ask you, what do you think of CLA in general? Because I used to take, when I was losing weight, I took CLA for a long time because it did help. I read a lot that it helped lower insulin, increase insulin resistance, all that stuff. And then I started reading studies that there were studies that it actually increased insulin resistance, and there was a lot of conflicting data. I'm wondering if what your thoughts are.
I know that tonillin is a drug form that's actually created by pharmaceutical labs that's CLA. But I'm telling you, my philosophy is this. Get it in its whole form the way nature designed it, that's not screwed it by mankind to make a profit, you'll probably do fine. But when you start getting the substrata, the fractions of stuff and trying to make it into some kind of a beneficial profit, you're probably going to screw it up. That's just my general philosophy across the board on that whole thing.
Yeah.
And I know that
I
people
couldn't agree more, Mark.
I'm probably speaking to the choir here, but the bottom line is the people that consume raw cream from grass-fed cows in whole form lose weight very effectively and have a decreased CRP, the C-reactive protein levels in their bodies, and their cholesterols. They get the high beneficial, low detrimental cholesterol ratios like they want to, the high 3s and low 6s. Right. And that is really the whole key here is the mankind hasn't really done a whole lot in the last 100 years in the nutritional side. We need to go back to the way our great-grandparents ate and how their cows are taken care of and bring that forward and have kind of a marriage of advanced technology when we need it and using these older traditions to nourish us and just do it better.
It's really simple. I mean, so much of the health problems that we're having right now are just our bodies having to deal with the toxic effect of denatured food. It's just we eat food to be nourished, and here we are being denatured and toxified, and our body has to deal with that. Cholesterol responses, C-reactive protein responses, insulin resistance, leptin resistance. They're all things that happen as a reaction to the toxic effect of the food that we're eating. So I do a presentation which is called Share the Secret. And I really don't talk a lot about raw milk. I talk more about our immune systems and talk about what's in our food and then talk about the fact that raw milk doesn't have any of those things. It's just the way Mother Nature created it. And one of the slides I show is the ingredient list on a baby formula container. And it's got 72 different things in it, and after the third ingredient, you can't pronounce or understand what they are. And we're giving this to our newborn children. It's crazy. It's nuts. It's scary. It is. Yeah.
Beyond scary.
Yeah, well, we went through this kind of phase starting in the 50s where we thought, wow, we're better. Science is better than nature. We're smarter than nature, and we really patted ourselves on the back. And we could invent sprays that would make bugs not touch our food anymore, and we could make things bigger, and we could reinvent milks and formulas, and we were really congratulating ourselves for many, many years. And now we're sort of paying the price for that.
There was a Faustian deal we made with the devil back in the 30s and 40s. We're paying the price now with health.
That's exactly right. We were paid Peter to pay Paul, and now we're paying back with interest. Exactly.
Yeah.
So, Shan, you want to have a couple more for us?
Yes, I've got one from Lois in New Zealand who's asking, colostrum powder has become very popular as a health product. Yeah. I have Crohn's disease and been told colostrum would be helpful. What is your opinion on colostrum powder?
Very good question. We were the first dairy in the United States of America to have a permit, and I negotiated this. It took me about 6 months to negotiate this deal. Remember that colostrum is not considered a dairy product because it comes from the circulatory system of the body, of the udder, not from the lacteal glands. So the first milk that comes out of the udder is not really milk, it's pre-milk. It's the wonderful immune transfer factors coming from the circulatory system of the mother to give to the baby before the milk comes in through the lacteal glands. Bottom line is we are able to collect it and sell it in raw, fresh form here in California. We're the only dairy in the United States that has a permit to do that. So
sign me up for that.
It's great stuff.
That's beautiful. Yeah, no, I know it is.
Here's the thing. When you take it and you fractionate it or you heat it or you homogenize or pasteurize, which is heating, you lose a lot of those benefits. Just the same thing you do with pasteurization because these proteins are they're heat liable. They break down when you heat them. And, my God, these are living immune system transfer factors. It's blood. I mean, literally blood from mother to baby. And antibodies and stuff are destroyed during the heating process. So raw, fresh colostrum or colostrum which has been freeze-dried in low-temperature conditions that's been rehydrated properly are going to give you an entirely different physiological response than a pasteurized defatted, transfer factor type colostrum. Now, I can't speak to, there's so many different kinds of colostrum products out there. I can't speak to each one individually, and I won't, because I'm not going to make any claims about which one's better or not. But I do know this. When raw colostrum is consumed straight, is a very, very profoundly probiotically building and immune system regulating food. Thyroid, pituitary, hormones, all kinds of stuff happens. And it's not a far stretch to imagine why. If you think about a baby born with 90% or 80% of his immune system missing, or 50%, depending on how the numbers are, what mammal you're talking about, that transfer is critical between the mother and the baby to get the immune system working right and to get all the organs working right. So that's what colostrum does in its living whole form, is get you working right. So, Mother Nature had a big plan, and this is the way it works, is the transfer of these immunoglobulins and fatty acids and amino acids and all this good stuff at birth. And as an adult, you don't get quite the response because you don't have the leaky gut syndrome like the newborn babies do, but you can get a tremendous benefit from raw colostrum especially.
So what form do you sell this colostrum?
In pints.
In a liquid form?
In a liquid, just like it comes out of the cow.
And just locally for these California markets?
In California, the lucky Californians, yep.
Lucky Californians. I don't know, you guys that are listening in California, you guys are lucky enough, because
sexy,
I would
gorgeous California girls, yep.
It's worth coming to California just for that.
Yep.
So I think, Sean, give us two more questions, and we're gonna move on to some other stuff.
Okay, this one's from Michelle in Perth. Dairy products are something you'll stay away from as an asthmatic. What are your views on this? I have also read many articles talking about how our bodies naturally produce an enzyme that after breastfeeding would make us all lactose intolerant if we did not continue to drink dairy. This being said, wouldn't that mean our bodies are not made to digest dairy?
Well, I have a very good answer for that. If we were to take all of our modern supermarkets away, we'd pray for a cow or a goat or a sheep or something that had an udder on it, because we'd be hunting, and the grass around us could not be consumed by an animal. We can't eat grass. We don't have four stomachs. So if you go back to our great-grandparents where there were no supermarkets, you would actually have a family cow. You would have a local cow. You would have a goat or a sheep or something, or a horse or a musk oxen, something to get milk from. And that was something that you were absolutely committed to. It was a religious thing, that you had an animal you could feed, because then that animal could give you its life, give you beef if you had to have it. It always gave offspring, so you could actually eat a calf if you needed to. It made butter, cream, cheese, colostrum, all those dairy products that we can consume because we have a single stomach. But it's interesting to note that people do not generally, and I'm not going to speak for everybody here, but do not generally have lactose intolerance with the consumption of raw milk, but do have lactose intolerance with the consumption of pasteurized milk. And the reason is, raw milk has all of its complementary enzymes and bacteria that create enzymes and bacteria that colonize the gut to create enzymes for you. So when you drink raw milk, guess what? It has the lactobacillus bacteria. It colonizes the gut along with bifidobacteria and coliform bacteria that create lactase. So if you have a propensity in your particular race to not produce lactase, so what? The raw milk produces it for you, and you have no lactose intolerance. If you remember, the Maasai in Kenya, they black as coal. They drink raw milk like crazy and have no problem with digestion of raw milk. The Russians, Chinese. I mean, people around the world have examples of that.
I was just going to ask you about the Maasai, because I had heard that they drink a combination. What they do is they let some of the blood from the neck of the cow, and they mix that with raw milk. And everybody says, my God, that's the most barbaric, disgusting thing I've ever heard. And to me, I'm thinking, I can't think of a more vibrant, vital, pure drink, and it doesn't kill the cow, and you're getting pure vitality and life force from the blood, and then all the nutrients from the milk.
You got it.
It's probably a perfect drink. Now, what about the asthma thing that she mentioned? And I know you talked about that before.
Well, a person who has asthma is really helped a lot by non-denatured whey proteins, and those are found obviously in raw milk, and they're found in raw whey. There was two huge studies done in Europe at Basel, Switzerland in the last 5 years. One was the Parsifal study, and one was the Gabriel study, and both of them showed that children that drank raw milk across Europe, multi-center study, peer-reviewed, internationally published, did not have asthma. I mean, the dramatic reduction in asthma. One was 87%, was like 50% reduction of asthma, eczema, and allergies from the general population. And it has to do with the whey protein being a mast cell stabilizer, so you don't get the histamine response, where pasteurization actually triggers mast cells to break down. You do a search, and you'll find that the most allergenic food in the United States of America is pasteurized milk, where raw milk is exactly the opposite.
It's amazing. It's so,
it
to
is.
me, that is just shocking. There's no more tangible example, I'm serious, about how pure food is perfect for the body understands it, and how when we start tampering with it, the whole thing gets screwed up.
You got
It's
it.
just amazing. So, all right, Sean, give us one more question, and then we're going to have to wrap up pretty soon.
Okay. Annalie from New Zealand asks, when I make my own yogurt with raw milk, sometimes after a day or two the yogurt has thickened and there is quite a bit of liquid that separates from the yogurt. Is that raw whey?
Yes, it is. That's correct. And the white portion is the casein. So you have casein and you have whey protein, the two major proteins found in milk. Now, milk is 87% water, so when you started pressing all that out, you're going to get a dry curd, and the water will be in the fraction of the whey protein will be in the water fraction.
Okay. So Mark, tell us a little bit more about your farm and what you do and some of the products that you have.
Well, you know what? I started out as just a regular organic dairy, selling my milk to be pasteurized with Organic Valley, which is a big co-op here in North America. And we had people showing up at the dairy. We had movie stars. We had Daryl Hannah, Martin Sheen, some other people show up here at the dairy, and Martin Sheen's wife, and they wanted their milk raw. And we didn't realize that Altadena, a big commercial raw dairy, had just gone out of business about a year before we started operations. And we were the southernmost organic dairy here in California near L.A., and so people started showing up. And that gave me the idea, because I was a paramedic for 17 years and was really deeply involved in medical education and the whole nutritional aspect of raw food, as much as yourself. So I immediately built a small creamery and started doing the testing necessary to qualify to be a raw milk dairy. And CDFA, our regulatory agency here, helped me put together the protocols. And then I had Dr. Ron Hull, who actually lives in Australia and works down there with the SANS, to develop our food safety program. So we've actually go way beyond what the state of California requires, but we built organic pastures dairy here on 500 acres of pasture ground and have milk about 400 cows now, twice a day, about 2,000, 2,100 gallons a day, and we feed people, about 65,000 people a week through 450 stores or so here in California. Yeah, it's a growing concern, and people are very excited about it. And it's very liberating because the Internet has shared this information among so many people, and people are just virally sharing their stories. It's really pretty powerful.
Yeah, no, I wish we can get some of your products. So do you have yogurts and cheeses? And
we have cheese. We have truly raw organic cheese. It's grass-fed. It's never been above 100 degrees. And we also have kefir. We don't have any yogurt. They actually mandate that yogurt be pasteurized. So we make a kefir, which is kind of a fermented raw milk,
Right. Okay. Can you make me a protein powder that I can sell all over the world?
Well, I tell you what, it would be an interesting product because we would take the whey that comes off our cheese, and that's undenatured raw whey, and that would go through some kind of a dehydration process, and that could be marketed with a very high value added. And you know what? That's the interesting thing. We ought to put our heads together on that one.
Let me tell you something. There's a market for that like you have no idea, because people that are in the know, they know whey protein is good for them, but they also know that the industrial traditional whey protein is just denatured chemicals and it's trash. So to be able to put that together, there's a market for that like you have no idea. So let's put our heads together on that one.
All right, I like that one.
Okay.
Well, we currently don't have any market for it, so it'd be interesting use of whey product, literally a waste product. Would be awesome.
Let me tell you something, Mark. I got your market for it. Okay, so as much as you can give me, I'll give you a market for that. I promise you.
All right.
Listen, Mark, I really, really appreciate your information. It's excellent information. And for those of you that have been following the Gabriel Method, you know that everything that Mark is talking about is exactly what I've been saying. That you need to nourish your body with real foods that are not denatured, that are the way nature intended. And if you do that, you give your body a chance to get stronger. All the different hormonal problems and conditions that you have start to go away, and you lose weight, and you feel healthier. You have more energy. Everything changes. So, Mark,
100%
really,
right, John. 100% right, all the way to the bank. Absolutely, that's the way that's absolutely
Good.
right. Yep.
Good. Listen, Mark, how do you want people to contact you if they want to?
Organicpastures.com. Mark at organicpastures.com is my email address. Lots of exciting things going on in California. We invite people to visit our website and see what's going on with what we're doing, and exciting times.
Beautiful. Mark, you're amazing. I really think that your information is awesome, and I really think it's going to be very valuable for everyone that's out there. So thanks very much, John. And let's stay in touch, okay?
You betcha. Thanks for having me on, guys. Bye-bye.
My pleasure. Take care.